is Notsam Wrestling.
Introducing your host from New York, here is Sam Roberts.
Here with me in the Notsam studio for the very first time is somebody that goes by a lot of names. Space Jesus, Pizza Cat Jr., but of course, everybody knows her as Billie Starkz. Welcome, Billie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, and I'll tell you that, obviously I've been aware of you for a long time now, a couple of years, but the thing that made me go okay, I want to know more about this person's story was a tweet that you sent out. I don't know if it was a couple of weeks or a month ago, but it was just you trying to make a decision as to whether to wrestle or go to your prom or your junior prom.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's it. That's the story. That's literally in a tweet, your whole story right there, right?
Yeah.
And what is the decision that you made?
I chose wrestling over prom.
I love it. I love it. Of course you did. Of course you did. So, I mean, it's like a big question and probably not that complicated for you, right? Because it's probably normal at this point for you. But I think for most of us, it's kind of hard to picture what our high school careers would have been like if we were not only actively wrestling on the weekends, but in a way that is well known, right? Like publicized.
Yeah.
It's like people know that you're doing this. What is that like for you to exist as a student at the same time as having this identity as a career pro wrestler now at the same time?
It's honestly truly crazy. I never expected it to happen as quickly as it did. When I was little, my game plan was, I'm going to go to college. I'll find a training school near my college, train. And then when I finish school, I'll go and have this crazy wrestling life. And then wrestling school happened early, when I was in middle school. And then I just was so connected to other wrestlers because I did photography before I was a wrestler. So all these people wanted to give me opportunities and give me a shot, and I took the advantage of it, and now I've grown to be a wrestler while I'm still in high school. And at first I didn't really talk about it. My friends knew, but I didn't really tell the whole school. And then I had one incident where I was like, oh crap, I should probably tell people about this.
Yeah. What was the incident?
So my freshman year, I was covered in bruises because I'm wrestling and I bruise easily. And I was this is the first couple of weeks of my freshman year, and I go into my English class and my teacher was like, hey, can you come out to the hallway with me? And I was like, yeah. And I'm like, what did I do? I had all my work done. Why am I going out in the hallway right now? And she pulls me out in the hallway and asks, is everything okay at home? And I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And she was like, you're just always covered in bruises. And I was like, oh, you think my mom beats me?
Yeah.
No.
No. Other people do, but not my mom.
So then I started showing her videos, and I had to take a career options class my freshman year because they want to see where you want to go with your life. And I was like, I want to be a wrestler. And they're looking at me like, what do you mean? And I would show them videos. They're like, how do you have a resume for this? How do you go about this? And I was like, here's all my crap.
It's kind of funny when you're at this place where the teachers are like, let's teach these people how to start formulating a career. And you're like, I could kind of tell you how I've already done it.
Yeah, I was like, here, I already have it all figured out.
Yeah.
And my teacher would actually play my videos during class. She's like, oh, this is so cool. You already figured out what you want to do, blah, blah, blah. You're so organized. And I was like, I'm just hoping it works out.
Yeah. I think that people think that it's a bigger thing than it is, right? Because there are people in their 30s that are kind of searching around, figuring out what they want to do with their lives. So the idea that somebody at your point in life has already knows seems daunting, but also when you know, you just kind of know. It's not like you did something extra to figure it out. You were just like, this is the thing that I like, and there are opportunities to do it now, right?
Yeah, it kind of just clicked because I was very little and I started watching it, and I'm a very stubborn person. So I was like, yep, this is what I want to do. And I never changed my mind. And when I was little, I would always be like, I'm going to do cheerleading for wrestling because it will make me athletic and in shape. And I will do cross country for cardio. and I hated cross country. I hate cardio.
But it was all that stuff was for wrestling. It will make me a better wrestler at some point.
Yeah, that was my game plan because I was like, oh, I can't wrestle yet, but when I can, this will already help me get prepared for it. Like the cheerleading helped with like all the rolling and like, oh, I can base for things. And like cross country was all cardio, and I hate running.
But wait, I think everybody does, right? Like that's like if you could figure out how to be in shape doing zero cardio, like that's the dream, right?
Yes, yes. My mom like loves running, so she got so excited
Oh.
when I did cross country because when she was like in school, she like held records in Ohio and crazy stuff like that. So she was so excited when I started doing it, and then when I like she could just see the pain in my eyes every time I ran. She's like, she hates this.
Yeah, there's that thing, and it becomes even more difficult too when you start the run going like, this is gonna suck. Like it never doesn't suck.
I always enjoyed like running in the rain. It was the most calming, and like I never felt like blown up.
Uh-huh.
But like every time I would run, it was so hot, and I just would see all these people immediately at the start just sprint, and I was like, this is about to be like 2 miles, and you guys are sprinting the
Yeah.
2 miles. I got a mean jog in me.
Yeah, but I guess that's what you need, right? Like to get a good, but say a 15-minute match.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've got enough in you for obviously for a good 15-minute match, and you actually do. Like your style of wrestling is probably, I mean, it seems, I'm not an athlete myself. I don't know if you could have guessed, but your style of wrestling seems more cardio centric in a way, just because there's a lot of rolling and a lot of quick movements and a lot of this. But I guess if you can do that without running 2 miles at a time, don't run 2 miles at a time, right?
I think wrestling cardio is completely different than anything else. Like the closest thing I found to it is probably like boxing, because I've done boxing. And it's a lot of that same like movement. You're staying very active, but you're also can pace yourself out.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like wrestling, it has like its up and downs, like a roller coaster, so you can pace yourself out throughout it.
So when you say that you were doing cheerleading and track and field and stuff like that as sort of a base for wrestling, I mean, how young are we talking about? Is this you in like 6th grade, younger?
So I started cross country in the 6th grade, and I did it in 7th grade too. Cheerleading was very, very early on. I did that in like 3rd grade, all the way up until my 8th grade year when I like started pushing on wrestling more and more. I started training in the 7th grade, and I had matches and matches, and then it started getting to the point where I'm like, oh, cheerleading's in the way of wrestling. We got to get rid of her.
So yeah, now it's become this thing that was going to help the wrestling. Is I can't go to wrestling practice because I'm in cheerleading practice. Mm-hmm. I know which one is going to stop. When you started training in 7th grade,
Mm-hmm.
was it just like, I'm just going to train to train? I'm going to train to get good. Like you couldn't have thought, yeah, I'll start training in 7th grade, and then, by the time I'm 15, I'll be able to have pro matches. Or did you?
So I thought I wasn't going to be able to have like matches until I was maybe like 16, maybe 18. Because the youngest wrestler I met at that point was 16.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, there ain't no way they're letting me get into this ring this early. And I only trained for like 6 months before I had my first ever match. And
Wow.
I was like, what's going on right now? I'm not supposed to be here. But it's wild to think about. And I don't know. How do I explain this? Like, even when I went for my first training session, I came right after like a cheerleading practice, and I was only supposed to watch and be like, see how I think about it. Do I truly want to train here? Is this the right time? And I was watching, and the trainer was like, hey, can you come like step into the ring? Do you want to like roll around? And I was like, yes, please. And then I was just hooked from that moment on. And I never expected stuff to progress as quickly as it did. Like,
Yeah.
I thought I was going to have to train for so much longer. I didn't think I was going to get as many opportunities as I did. I was like, oh, why do things just happen as quickly as they did?
Yeah, but your stepdad is a photographer, right? Like a wrestling photographer. So it's like you were already familiar enough with the business, quote unquote, right? Like you
Yeah.
kind of knew. It wasn't like you were stepping into this foreign world. So maybe that big leap had kind of already been taken in your brain because you were not just a person that watched it on TV. You were familiar with the independents already. Like you had been to shows already in sort
Mhm.
of a professional capacity.
Yeah, I think that's honestly what helped me progress the fastest was being able to talk to people.
Mm,
When I was doing promo pictures, like I would be like, "Oh, why'd you start wrestling? What's like advice you would give younger wrestlers?" Blah blah blah, and a lot of people would help me with the psychology aspect before I even step foot into the ring to do any of the moves and all that jazz. But like, I think I already had like the strong brain for wrestling
yeah.
before I was like, "Oh, I can do moves now?"
Yeah. Yeah. I think that too. Like when you look at wrestling, I think that when people make big strides, it's when they start figuring out why they're doing things instead of how. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
how is usually that first step. And then once they figure out like why a wrestler would do this in the ring, it's when
Mhm.
those stories start to be told and when the audience starts to connect a little more and it's not just like, hey, look what I can do. And I feel like being around it so much, the why was probably in your head before the how.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. When that's an extreme advantage. Was there anybody that you saw, whether it was on those shows or even on television, that made it more of a possibility, like that made it seem more realistic? That like, oh, well, I see this person doing it. I think if that person does it, maybe I could do this.
Um, I don't I feel like it was just being around independent wrestling as a whole. Like once I discovered independent wrestling, I was like, this is a possibility. Like I know where to start now.
Mhm.
And it wasn't like one singular person. It was just independent wrestling as a whole, like opened my eyes of like, oh, this is something I can do. I don't have to go through like you don't have to go through all these other markets to get to the top. You can start at the independent level and grow yourself to this big brand.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure you've seen people that are just independent wrestlers, right? And it's
Yeah.
like you can also just do that now. But I'm sure, like even once you start wrestling, like seeing people like Shotzi on SmackDown, you're sitting there going like, this is literally. I mean, she still looks the same. She's still wrestling the same. You're like, this is a thing. Like this is a thing that happens to BBC. Like there's so many people that you've worked with in a short period of time that are getting signed up and that are ending up on TV and stuff like that. I'm sure that must be encouraging, right?
Yeah. I always talk about this like it helps a lot with seeing all my friends like move up the ranks and I feel like it's like, oh, they're already up there. It gives me something to strive towards and I'm so proud of everything they're doing, but they still are willing to like help other people out. Like I can message these people and be like, "Hey, I have a question about this. Do you have your opinion? Blah blah blah." And they're always willing to help.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing that struck me too, because I also was kind of like paying attention to the way people spoke about you and kind of treated you. And I feel like wrestling has changed a lot, especially independent wrestling, where like there was a time not that long ago where it was like dingy, carny, unsafe. Like, a lot of you'd hear these like horror stories
Mhm.
and you'd be like, you can't send anybody that's under 30 into a building like that. But now I feel like it's just become so much of a more supportive, kind of inclusive in the best possible definition of the word, place. And that I feel like instead of people trying to make sure that, they look good so that the right person sees them, people are really invested in putting on good shows and making sure that the other people that are doing what they're doing are growing.
Yeah, and I think that's what wrestling should be. Like, at some point, we're all going to have to get in the ring with each other. There's no point in tearing one person down to build yourself up. How about let me build this person up, they build me up, and we keep growing together?
Yeah, yeah, and you go like, okay, that was a really good match. We can make this even better. We can make this a thing, and people will
Hmm.
come to see this match because you hear about it. And I think, and I'm sure that you've noticed it in your own life. Like the internet has changed everything. Where like everything you do could be seen by a global audience, right?
Yeah, and I think that comes with like a positive and a negative because it
Yeah.
really there's like moments where I'm like I can't mess up, like I can't do new things because I'm like if it doesn't work out well, the internet's gonna be like, what was this?
Right. Right.
But it also helped me grow so quickly because so many more eyes are on me. And I think that was a lot for like so many other wrestlers, where like the internet gets attention of you and then boom, big superstar. You blew up overnight because Twitter exists.
Yeah. I mean, but it's also got to be so much pressure, right? Because like realistically, for most people, nobody's supposed to see you for the first 3 to 5 years of wrestling. Like nobody's supposed to see you, and those are the growing pains, and those are where you're figuring everything out. But now it's like, I mean, literally your first match is on YouTube.
And it's so bad.
You don't like it. You can't even.
I hate it. Oh my God. Mouse made, I don't remember who watched it the other day, and he's like, sit on the couch and suffer. And I was like, I hate it here. Because I injured my ankle in my first match, and I just remember being like, oh, I hate it. Why do I do this to myself? It was on a freaking elbow. I do a swanton, but I injure my freaking ankle on an elbow off the top. I'm an idiot.
Well, you just wanted to do stuff, right?
I don't know what I was trying to do. I was like, oh, this will be fine. And I wasn't even, that was like, so my first match, it was a funny story. Like, I was only 6 months into training, and it was originally going to be me versus another girl I trained with, and it was both of our debuts. So it was me versus another green girl, and we were supposed to be pre-show. And then, me being good old big fiery baby face sold too many tickets, and they're like, all the crowd's going to leave after pre-show. We're moving you guys to semi-main event. And I was like, why? And then the match changed into like a triple threat. So it was me, the other girl, and then a vet to like try to help lead us. But I was like, imagine your first match being a triple threat. And I was like,
yeah.
It was a match that happened, and I think just...
I love that description, by the way. It was a match that happened.
Yes. And I think it honestly made me, like, in my head, I was like, I'm gonna have to lead this. I'm
so
originally, and I was like, I am so green.
Did you? But you didn't know you were green, or you did?
Oh, I did.
You did.
I
Okay.
knew I was bad because I was like, I watched so much wrestling, and then I would watch like my training matches, and I'm like, this is god awful. What am I doing? And I just know it takes time and practice. And I'm not a very athletic person. I have to like practice over and over until I get something.
Yeah.
And there's so many times where I'm like, I want to do this flashy thing, and I'm like, wait, no, I'm not athletic. I can't do this.
Yeah, there's a reason why it's like people pay tickets to see it, because it's really hard to do.
Yes.
But I'm actually really happy that you hate your first match so much, because like when I hear people go like, yeah, man, right out of the gate, like I love my early stuff. I'm like, oh, you're gonna crash real hard. It's gonna get ugly at some point for you. But it seems like you're a pretty self-aware person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even in the sense that I think most people when they're green don't know that. Like they think that they're like, yeah, I mean, I'm new, but I'm better than the average. And it's like, no, you're new. And I think that that's a good, especially in wrestling. Like I think it's really good to be self-aware.
I think it really helps that like with my parents and stuff, they're very honest with me. Like very brutally honest, especially Mouse, my dad. He has always told me like, I'm never going to tell you you're good until you are. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. And there was right after my, like, this was one of my first really big early on matches with Kylie Ray at Black Label. He came to the back and hugged me. And I was like, what's going on? Did I just have a good match? Like, what is happening? And then he, like, hugs me.
What's
and you
this
see, like,
feeling
this
of
little
approval?
tear. And I was like, and he immediately ran away from everybody because Brainbuster was back there trying to get a picture of it. And he's like, you ain't catching me. And zoomed out.
But he was proud.
Yes, I was
That's
like
so
very
sweet.
shocked. I was like, I actually had a good match. I got Mouse's approval.
Yeah, and there's no getting around it. You can't pretend you weren't proud because I felt your emotions. I felt them. So like when your parents come to terms or realize like, oh, this is what she's going to take seriously. Like she's training now, she's going to start having matches. Obviously, Mouse was supportive. I mean, not overly supportive, but like supportive of the fact that you're doing this, I would think. Was your mom in the same boat? I mean, this is kind of like, I know I remember when I was a freshman in high school, backyard wrestling was like huge.
I love backyard wrestling.
You do.
I am such a big fan. Like when I watch wrestling, I watch backyard wrestling. And people think I'm crazy for it. But I love, like, me as a wrestler, I've grown to, like, just study wrestling now.
Uh-huh.
But backyard wrestling is so unpredictable that I can actually enjoy it and be like, let's go, this is crazy. And I don't know what it is.
You know, I've always thought that there is a market for somebody to do like a really massive backyard show. You know what I mean? Like if you could find, I guess it's kind of like what CZW was doing, but like if you could literally like in a backyard that is just like massive. I don't know if it's in like a really rich area of town or something like that, but I feel like there's like that's the one thing that hasn't really been done, like an pay-per-view massive backyard show. I think it would be amazing.
I would love it, but I feel like there's so many people who would be like, why are you giving people a spotlight? They don't train, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it's fun. Let people enjoy their lives.
Right. It's wrestling. It's wrestling. And I feel like, you know, now more than ever, it's like we're really getting exposed to the fact that everything is wrestling. There are no sort of ultimate definites, right?
Yes.
Like stuff isn't going to work and is going to work.
Mm-hmm.
But that's for everything.
Yes.
But like when I was a freshman in high school, I was like, yep, I'm starting a backyard wrestling promotion. It's definitely happening. Like this is when the best of backyard wrestling VHS tapes were coming out and everything, and it was huge. And my parents were like, no. It's like, well, I mean, and they were like, yeah, no, there's no conversation here. It's just it's a hard pass. Like,
cut that off right now.
Right now. And I mean, I know, you know, it's different. I wasn't going like, I'm going to go to wrestling school and train and do this the right way. I was like, no, I'm going to get a camcorder and a whole bunch of friends to come over. And they're like, yeah, no, you're not going to do that at all. Was your mom on board with the journey?
So she was never like a huge fan of wrestling. So she was like,
oh, now it's
first,
taken over the house entirely.
She was like, crap. But she, like, once I started, she didn't really care about like the in-ring aspect.
Mm-hmm.
She cared about the gear, the merchandise, all this stuff. So she helped with all the marketing. I think she really grew to love that part. And then she was like, oh, let's do social media, let's do this, let's grow this. And I feel like that's why I have such good merchandise, because my mom has always helped out with that. And then I have always looked decent. Like, she puts me together. Like, I will give her, like, crazy ideas, and I'm like, hey, this is my idea. Can you, like, draw something up?
And then she does?
Yes.
That's great. Yeah, because, I mean, you do have, like, your gear always sticks out. You have, like, 7 nicknames. You have a faction / promotion / whatever. Like, you,
yes,
like there
it's
is
crazy.
like there is this kind of bigger picture to the whole thing, but I guess that's because the entire household is involved.
Yes. And it's crazy to think about, like, most of those things are just, like, things I already liked, or they were just jokes with me and my friends.
Yeah.
And it just, like, grew into something more. Like, Space Jesus is just a dumb joke.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, this is great. And I was like, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get it, because it's like, even though it doesn't really necessarily make sense, when you come out with, like, blue hair and all the colors and the sparkles and everything, you're like, yeah, I mean, I could, if there was a Space Jesus, I could see that's what he or she would look like, right?
It's wrestling. Like, we can get away with anything. Like, anything's possible.
I love it. Yeah, so how do the people in your school kind of react to it? Not just your friend circle, but like I know when I was in high school, again, one of the kids in the school had a bit part in the movie The Sixth Sense. And it was like, you know him? That's the kid from The Sixth Sense. And I can only imagine that, like, if I were in that high school, I'd be like, yeah, that's the girl that read. That's Billie Starkz. Everybody would have their, you know, YouTube out on their phone and everything. Is there kind of a overall awareness of it in school, or not as much?
I think it's very, like, apparent in, like, my classes and people that are around me almost every day. And then it's also, like, most of my teachers, like, know, because I come into school and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go take this nap real quick. I'm back. Hi guys, how are you? But I think it's not very like known throughout like my entire school because I'm a very like laid back and chill person when I'm at school.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not like interacting with everybody, and I'm not very like well known.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of keep just to my classrooms, knock out school, and then I never go to like any of the after school stuff because I'm always at wrestling. Like, I've never went to my homecoming. I never went to any of the football games or the basketball games. And my friends are like, hey, what about prom? And I was like, no.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like you're almost already past it, right? Like you're doing the stuff that you would be doing once you're done with high school now. So it's almost like, yeah, I'm just gonna do that.
And like, I was very lucky that like I've gotten to go to prom with my boyfriend, and he graduated, so I went to his prom, and that was like super nice, and that was the only thing I've ever like went to like that. And I was like, oh, it was fun. I dressed up. It was cool. But I was like, I experienced it. I don't need another one. And I'm not a very like, oh, I need to look nice and look pretty. I'm a very sweatpants, sweatshirt. Here's my hair in a bun. Hi guys, I'm here.
Right. Or wrestling gear.
Yes, or wrestling gear. Yeah. My mom like complains about this all the time, that I like ask for so much makeup and like all this stuff, but I never wear it outside of wrestling. I'm like, there's no need. Why do I need to look nice? Who am I being presentable for?
I mean, I love that. It's so functional. Like, I feel like everything, like whether it's cheerleading or cross country or your makeup or whatever, it's just like, how am I going to be able to apply this to wrestling? Because if you can't explain that to me, I'm just not that interested.
Yes.
So, how did you find that when you kind of made the leap from the kid that was hanging around all the time to the photographer to being like, no, this is one of the boys, you know, this is somebody who's on the show now. Did you, I mean, clearly most people were supportive. Did you find that it was kind of across the board supportive, or were there people like...
So, like, it was very supportive for me. I was very, very lucky because a lot of people are weird about kids in wrestling, which are, like, I understand.
Yeah.
But I always had a parent there. I always had someone, like, with me who was going to take care of me. And I'm lucky I still got health insurance. Some of these wrestlers don't have health insurance. I don't have to pay if I break my bones. My mom does. But, like, there was times where...
I love that. I just love the idea of there being, like, a debate. Do you think wrestlers should have health insurance? Some of us have our parents' health insurance,
good.
so it's all right. Don't worry about it.
But there was times where like people were scared to use me just because of my age and stuff like that, or like, oh, I've seen you since you were like this tiny, and now you're in the ring. Like, what's going on? I don't feel comfortable with this.
Yeah.
So there was times like that, but I think people like grew and seen me develop as a wrestler, so they're like, okay, we trust you. Let's get used to this.
Yeah.
And I think it's just hard sometimes because you've seen this little person and now they've grown up and you're like, when did we get here? I'm getting old.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the people that were like, oh, it's almost like, yeah, they had that. It's hard to turn off that like sort of little kid affection that they might have had for you and go like, no, we have to go to work and make this look like, you know, she's getting her ass kicked and I'm the one that's got to kick her ass. Have you had to tell people like, you know, you gotta go harder. You gotta hit me here. You gotta make this look like...
Oh my God, this was like such a big problem when I first started training. Like all these guys were afraid to hit me. So me being a very fired up person, I'm just blasting away. And I was like, come on. And my trainer would make fun of him. They're like, you better hit her. She's going to murder all of you. Come on.
So that's what you do. You'd be like, well, I'm going to start hitting you way harder until you start responding.
Yes, that was like always the thing. And then I was always told, because I was younger and I was a female, like, oh, you have to look like you're a fighter. Like, you have to be fighting for people to take you seriously. And I was like, okay, I get what you're saying. So I need to make everything look vicious as possible, and I need to look bigger than life.
Yeah. Was there anybody that reached out to you or like showed support for you early on that you were like, oh my God, like I can't believe that you're taking the time out for me?
Oh, there was so many people who really like wanted to see me like keep going, keep developing, and just want to be a better wrestler. And like Trey Miguel and like a bunch of people at Rockstar, I feel like helped with my develop very early on because they wanted to see me grow. They see me as a photographer and they see me like, oh, now she's making this transition and she actually wants this. She wants the help. And they would offer their brains like without even thinking about it. They're like, oh, you want this. Here, let me offer you this information. Let me help you. And I was very, very lucky for that. And I will never take that for granted.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a thing that, like, when you have developed a passion for something and you see somebody young develop that same passion, I mean, I feel like if you're a good person, if you're a bad person, you won't. But if you're a good person, you're going to want to go, like, how can I, like, do not lose this? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you see this thing and it's like, I wish that I had that much figured out then. Do not lose this. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. Because the other thing is, it can get difficult, right? Like, if you achieve a certain level of success early on, and then there's a minute where it plateaus, not to say that it will or it has, but, you know, who knows? It can become difficult to get okay with that. And that's one of those things where it's like, no, you're doing the right thing, you're doing the right thing, you're doing the right thing. And I think it's valuable to have those people in your life.
I've definitely had those moments where, like, I felt like, I feel flat right now. Like, I feel like I'm not growing. And I would, like, talk to, like, my friends about this, or I would talk to my parents and be like, something needs to change. I need to do something. Like, I feel like I've not grown. I'm stuck at this level, or, like, oh, I feel like I'm just doing the same things over and over again. I need something to click. I need something to go up. And, like, there's definitely, with wrestling, there's ups and downs. Like, we had to deal with the pandemic. And, like, we all went down for a little bit. But, like, that just means for when we grow back up, like, that makes people even more excited to see us again.
And interestingly enough, I mean, as bad as the pandemic was for everybody, or has been, I guess, for everybody, GCW running those shows early on was where you kind of got to be looked at for the first time by them and kind of were able to make a transition into that world, right?
Yeah, definitely during the pandemic, there was certain wrestlers who got a chance and it really pushed them to the moon. And I was definitely one of them. I can say Cole Radrick was one of them. And I think just getting that opportunity really pushed my career to the next level. And then being able to say, like, oh, I'm part of the GCW, like, locker room or this and that. And I'm going to be honest, like, I was like, oh, I'm on JCW most of the time, but you guys want to associate my name with this? I'm cool with that. So I'll take it. And I think there's so many eyes on GCW right now because of how big of a promotion it is and how it's making the independents more seen. And I will say it's like the #1 independent promotion right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would 100% agree with that. Have there been any fans that have been too supportive, like too protective almost, going like, no, don't do this, where you're like, don't worry, I got this, or...
So, like, I've definitely had moments where I'm like, I hate Twitter because they're like, oh, this person, like, when I wrestled Janai Kai, like, we did this crazy top rope, like, Falcon Arrow type thing, and I took it nasty because I'm crazy, and people were, like, losing their minds about it, and I was like, I'm completely fine. Yeah. I do swantons, but this is a scary bump.
Yeah.
And people were, like, just didn't feel comfortable with it, and they're like, oh, Janai's unsafe, this and that and this and that, and I was like, what are you guys talking about? I'm fine. Like, it's wrestling. Like, it's supposed to be scary. You're supposed to be afraid that I'm going to get hurt. Like,
right.
I'm trying to get emotion out of you, and I'm apparently provoking it.
Yes.
But there's a certain part where I'm like, you have to remember, like, I'm going to push the lines, but I promise, like, I will never push too far. Like, I'm going to be safe. I'm a wrestler. I'm a worker, brother.
But yeah, and I think that is kind of the part of, like, being so young and wrestling professionally. You have two choices. Either your character is the obnoxious heel that has everything they ever wanted at a young age, or it's the sympathetic babyface that we're like, oh, we want to protect this person because they're young. And it's like, you got to pick one of them, but you also, as an audience member, kind of have to understand that that's the role that you're in. So if you feel kind of uncomfortable with a moment, like my thing, because I hear that unsafe thing a lot. I feel like more now than ever with fans, not with wrestlers. And I feel like if a wrestler says that a wrestler that they were in the ring with is unsafe, then I take that very seriously.
Yes.
But I would never watch a match and go like, well, clearly that's unsafe, because it's like, well, how would I possibly know?
How would you know you're not taking the move? Like, you
Yeah.
don't know how that feels. And I would say, like, if you're a wrestler watching another wrestler do it, maybe, but you're still not in the ring and you're still not experiencing that.
Right.
And I've never had, like, a moment in the ring where I'm like, oh, I feel unsafe. Like, I feel in danger, blah, blah, blah. Because I know, like, every person I've stepped into the ring with, I've always felt, like, comfortable, and I know what I'm going to do and what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So at the time we're recording this interview the day before your match with Atticus at GCW, who, like, I think that's going to be one of those where, like, he's such a villainous person.
Such a scumbag.
Such a scumbag that it's like, this is one where I think it's going to pull on people's heartstrings, you know, if he can get his hands on you. But he also, okay, this is he likes to put the spikes into people's heads. It's one of the things that he likes to do. He does that often. I don't think have you ever done anything like that? Like, had the spikes planted in your head? Or I know you've never done any deathmatch stuff, but have you ever done anything like that?
So I've definitely done, like, a more hardcore style before, but I've never bled. I've never really got hit with anything. It's always vice versa. Like, I'm beating the crap out of these other people with weapons.
which is better, I find.
Yeah. I was like, I will happily beat you with this kendo stick. But, like, even Mouse has said, like, you better not get stabbed this weekend. He stayed home this weekend and is, like, hanging out with my brother.
Yeah.
And he was like, don't get stabbed. I swear to God. And I was like, I promise I won't.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. I'll be fine.
I'm not 100% sure that that's a promise that you can make. And I feel like that's part of the match, right? That's one of the reasons people are going to tune into it, to find out if you're going to get stabbed or
Yes.
not.
And I was like, this is what people are anticipating. Are they going to let this, is this going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah. And that is that fine line where it's like, there are people that would see that and go like, that should never happen. There are other people that would see that and go like, well, of course that should happen, because that's like
It's
this
just
taboo
too
thing.
more
It's-
like, I see it as like we're both just competitors in a ring. Like,
Right.
I don't take my age into consideration, and I've never have since like the day I started. Like, I hated the comment of like, you're good for your age, or like, oh, you're doing pretty great, blah blah blah. And I was like, tell me I'm good for like my wrestling ability,
Right.
not like my age, blah blah blah. And so many people are like, oh, you shouldn't be wrestling this young. And I'm like, well, I was doing cheerleading and getting kicked in the head and all this, and my little brother's doing football, but wrestling's unsafe.
Yeah. I mean, at least in wrestling, there should be some level of cooperation with the person that you're doing
Yes.
physical activity with. And like football, it's zero cooperation.
You're just wham.
Yeah. I have always found that interesting, that there is this still. I mean, it's been, over 35 years since the kind of sports entertainment thing was put out there, and it became very public information what this thing that we know as wrestling was. But it is still looked at in some ways as more brutal than like football, which it's really not, right?
I don't think so. And like where I go to box, there's like little kids who are like practicing boxing with each other. I accidentally like went to one class because I wasn't paying attention, and I looked and I was like, oh, they have an early class today. And I drove up to the gym, and there's all these like little 6-year-olds, and they're like all punching the bag, and I turn, I'm like, what's going on? I'm not supposed to be here. And they like let them box and like go at each other, and they're like, oh, it'll be fine, they're wearing gloves. And they were like, oh, can you like box with one of them? And I was like, yeah. So they're like, oh, just cover up and let them get some shots on you. And I'm letting them hit me, and he starts going hard. And I was like, oh, I'm done. And I kick him over. And I was like, I feel like a terrible person. I should have kicked this little kid over. And like,
But like you go into self-defense mode, right? Like
he
I'm
was
getting hit.
going. I was like, this little kid's tougher than some of the wrestlers I wrestled.
Yeah. And I think that that's what you aspire to, because I mean, also for women, I think they have the same thing. Like, oh, she's one of the better female wrestlers, and you're like, that's not really what I'm looking to hear right now.
You're a really good wrestler. Like, it shouldn't be this divide because of age or gender or anything like that. Like, I've never told like another female, I'm like, this is my honest critique. Like, I'm not taking anything else into consideration.
Yeah.
Because it's wrestling at the end of the day.
Right.
Like, nothing should matter other than wrestling.
Right. Although you could start going that, like, for a guy, you're actually not
I
that
should.
bad. Like, you're not that bad for a guy. Or for somebody that's a little older, you still got it. Like, you're still doing it. Good for you.
I'm gonna mess with Effie when I see him. He's talking about how he's like, you don't get good until you're in your 40s, and I was like, oh, you get good when you're old.
So are there, what you were talking about going to boxing? I know that like Shotzi bestowed the Pizza Cat Jr. Honor upon you, as is the lucha tradition, and that you like to do that to work the more lucha style. But I mean, that's a really athletic style. Is that something that, like, when you train now, do you try to acquire skills that are like lucha oriented, or do you go to boxing to do that, or are you just trying to cram as much in as you physically can?
So when I was like able, like, I still go to training and I train by myself. I've been taught by a lot of like good people who've known like the lucha style, like, oh, do this lucha drill, oh, practice this is how you base for this. And I kind of just like been practicing that and developing that idea. And then just watching wrestling, you can take a lot from people. And like, I think it's really great because that style is so extraordinary, so athletic, and like, it gives me something to work on. Because I am a very like, oh, I can stay planted, I'm good on like the ground, but like sometimes I'm like, oh, it's good to have these other things in my back pocket, like I can do this stuff if I ever need to.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I think the state license thing at this point is very odd. The different states have different age limits, and it's like nobody's going to a show to watch a bunch of little kids that shouldn't be in a ring get in a ring. Like, people don't go to shows to watch people who shouldn't be in a ring get in a ring. So to me, I feel like, I mean, this is, I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But there are states that you can't wrestle in right now. Have you thought about, like, once you turn 18 and you can get that license, going on a full-on, I got my license
like
tour?
A terror.
Yeah, just going on a tour and going to hitting each state that you could never go for the first time and blah blah blah.
I think it would be like fun to just like make jokes about it, and I was like, I honestly don't know. It just depends on like, do shows actually want to see me here? Because I don't know if these people know me in like these states, because I've never been able to wrestle here.
Right.
But like, I think there's definitely that opportunity. Like, when I do have the opportunity to get a license, I'm like, okay, where could I go?
Yeah.
And I think there's definitely some places on like the hit list that I'm like, yeah, this can definitely happen when I turn 18.
This is going to seem like a deeper question than I think it actually is. But what's like the real you, right? Because I feel like the you during the week and the you on the weekends are two like incredibly different people. Like, it would be really weird for me to sit here and be like, hey, there's this kid in high school. Why don't you be on my podcast? We'll talk about you being a kid in high school. That'd be a really weird thing to do. But I feel like, me taking this person who's a wrestler and having them on my podcast is not a weird thing. It's what I do. It's not a weird thing at all. So do you feel like when you go through the week, you're like, okay, I got to pretend to be this person so I can get to the weekend and wrestle? Or when you're wrestling, are you like, okay, these people don't know I'm just a student?
So I say it's like the Hannah Montana effect. I live two different lives. And like, I feel like the wrestling is me turned up. It's definitely like, oh, I'm just here to have fun. This is truly what I love. And you can see that when I'm in the ring. And then during the week, it's me turned down because I'm like collecting my energy back.
Save it for the weekend, brother.
And I'm like, yeah, this is when I need it. We'll turn it down right here.
Yeah. Does the traveling ever get to you? Like, I can't imagine. Like, did you drive to the East Coast for this show? I mean,
yeah, we drove up here.
From Louisville?
Yeah, we actually had to drive from Tennessee because we went to the AEW show, and then we drove to Louisville, switched out cars, then drove up 12 hours up here.
And this is, I mean, you're working regularly. Like, you're working most weekends. So this is not an odd
Yeah, this is
thing
a
to
very
do.
like normal drive. We've gone to Jersey so much that it's
Yeah.
like, oh, we're going to Jersey again. Everybody hop in the car.
Like, I did twice over the summer. I had to drive from here to Indianapolis, which you're near, and it like killed me. Like, I was like, I need 2 days to recover after that drive. It's like 12 hours long. But like, I mean, how did you get used to that, or are you used to it?
I'm very lucky that like I just got like my license and stuff.
So it's fun.
So I've been like, oh, I just get to chill. I'll play video games on my phone.
Oh.
And like Mouse and my mom have been the ones. I hate it here. And then we also usually drive with Cole Radrick, and Cole will like take over a bunch of the time. But definitely Mouse has just become a machine with driving. I think he enjoys driving.
And I guess he's been doing it even longer than you've been wrestling for the photography gigs and stuff, yeah.
So he just loves driving and will do it. We call him the machine because he literally will just sit here and be like, I got this. You guys good? Okay.
That's like, what do you do in the car? Like, once it becomes normal to take, because I know, like, when I'm taking a long road trip, it's like every so often. So it's like, oh, I'll have this podcast to listen to and this and that, and I'll actually like plan in advance. But when it's just like, well, it's the weekend, of course we're gonna drive 9 hours. Like, is there a go-to, or are you just like good at just posting up?
It like really depends on like the mood of the car ride.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll like every time we've gone to Minnesota, we usually go to First Wrestling. And Mouse refuses to play anything but Prince the entire way there.
Minnesota.
I was just let him live his life. He's the one driving. I will shut up and listen to Prince on repeat. And then there's been times where it's just like, oh, I'm going to binge watch this entire podcast series. And it's sometimes I'm like, oh, this is a really good podcast. There's other times where I'm like, I hate this person's voice. Please shut up. There was one time, I think it was for Fight Forever, Madman Pondo was in the car with us, and Mouse is turning on this podcast, and I think Colt Cabana starts talking, and Pondo just turns off the radio and goes, we're not listening to this anymore. And I was just like rolling. I was like, thank you, Pondo. I'm so done with this.
That's hilarious. And he could make that call. He's Pondo.
He's Pondo.
Yeah, I mean, of course he could make that call. Wow. Now you've dabbled in promoting a show, right?
Yes, I've helped out. Like, I'm usually, like, Mouse will be like, oh, I have this idea. And I was like, okay, what are we thinking?
Yeah.
And he'll say some names, I'll say some names. And then I'll be like, what about this match and this match? We'll put this person here and we'll, like, move stuff around. And then my mom's usually the one, like, oh, I'll reach out to everybody and plan a date. Because me and him are just like, this is our idea. Make it happen.
Yeah, which is the hard part.
Yes.
Like, her part is the absolute pain in the ass, stressful.
Like, I had to talk to people and negotiate and do all this crap.
Yeah.
And then, like, when it came to my birthday show, like, it was supposed to be, like, originally it was going to be my 16th birthday, so we're going to do, like, Sweet 16, and then
like the old MTV show? Like My Super Sweet 16?
Yeah.
Yeah, except it's a wrestling show.
Yes. But it ended up, because of COVID, we, like, moved it on to last year, and we did it. And I've never been like, I hate it here. I just want to wrestle. I'm so tired of talking to people. And I wasn't really doing anything. I just told my mom, like, these are the matches I want. Please make it happen. And she was like, okay. And I just remember, like, this person being like, oh, blah, 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 I can't make it. Or, oh, I'm late. Da, da, da. And I was like, oh, my God, please just work. Please just work. I don't want to change anything anymore.
Yeah.
And I was just so much more excited about my match, but I wanted to watch my entire show too, and I was like, I hate multitasking. Which one do I go do first?
Yeah.
And everybody thought I was crazy because I wouldn't put myself like main. I was like, I don't want to be the main event of my own show because I want to watch all these other matches. So I ended up doing it like where I was right after intermission or right before. I think I was right after. So I could watch the entire first card, and then I went downstairs, got changed, and then figured out my match, wrestled, and then I was like, okay, get unchanged, go back out, watch the rest of the wrestling.
That's kind of the way it should be. Like, I love the idea of a promoter putting on a show that they actually just want to watch.
Because I think that's, like, what it should be. Like, you're putting this on for your fans, but it should also be for yourself. Like, if you're a true wrestling fan and this is what you love, then it's going to go great. Like, I went to Jimmy's birthday show yesterday. And it was all matches that Jimmy wanted to do.
Jimmy Lloyd.
Yeah, Jimmy Lloyd.
Yeah.
And Jimmy was like, I'm going to be evil. This is all I want to watch, blah, blah, blah. This is like his dream matches. This is what he enjoys as a wrestler.
Yeah.
And like the crowd was there for everything. And I thought it was a great card just watching it. I was like, dang, Jimmy, you book a good card. He was like, yeah, because I'm having fun.
Do you like, are those shows that you like working where you know it's like, this is this person that you already know that person and this is his kind of dream show that he's just putting together? Are those funner to be a part of?
Because I think the energy's just there because everybody's just always having a good time, so you can feel that.
Yeah.
And then I think it's because like they expect you to do good, so you don't have any pressure, so you're already like, okay, this is gonna be good.
When you hear that AEW signed Nick Wayne, are you going to like a very unique contract where it's like technically not until after he's graduated high school we'd be doing? Do you kind of look at that going, things are changing?
I actually like messaged Nick when it first happened because I was like, dang, you weren't gonna tell me you're getting signed, man.
You favored me, man? Brother, you favored me?
So I was messing with him and we got onto the conversation about like, you're like paving the way for young wrestlers. Like this means something. Like, and we always talked about it because we're like, oh, when you turn 18, we're going to be signed to this, blah, blah, blah. And we always joked that I was going to make it there before him because he's like a little bit younger than me. And I was like, you beat me. What the heck? So like, it's always like that moment of like, you can see like things are changing in wrestling.
Yeah.
And it's definitely paving the way for younger wrestlers. And Nick has been one of the ones like pushing that envelope, me and Starboy Charlie and Marcus Mathers. And there's all of these young wrestlers who are truly like great professional wrestlers, let alone like besides their age. And like seeing that we're still going to be seen and get those opportunities is like a like lifting thing. Like in my head, I'm like, no one's going to give me a chance till I'm 18.
Right.
Blah, 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 blah. And then I found out like, independent wrestling loves me. So I can go and like do this. I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, none of these big companies are going to look at me until I turn 18. And then you start hearing things and you're like, they watch everything. It's so weird.
Yeah. And especially where like, I mean, you know, even rok-c, like she's over 18, but not that much over 18. She's a world champion and now getting looked at by, you know, WWE and stuff. Like the other thing, like it's not even just AEW, like WWE, like shifting NXT to being way younger and like figuring out like programs for college athletes and stuff like that. Like I think that there's going to be a major trickle down effect with that where they, you know, I mean, I think wrestling's changed. I think medicine in general has changed where like you can do things in a healthier way than you could even 10 or 15 years ago. And I think that the idea of having, you know, a young roster is not going to start at 25. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like I always think about it, like we joked about, there's a wrestler named Jody, the wrestler, like he lives in like the Vegas area. And we were talking about like how young, like I truly am. And I was like, oh, when I turn 23, I'm going to be a 10-year vet. And he was like, just in shock. And he was like, I started when I was 23. I hate you.
Right. And starting at 23 is young.
Yes.
Or it was. Until you screwed everything up.
Then all the children showed up and was like, hey, watch this.
Yeah. And that is, but I think that's the other thing that people don't take into consideration is like there's such a story around the fact that like you're in high school and your age and stuff, but like years of experience matter. And the fact that like you're not just this kid who started wrestling 6 months ago. Like you have a good deal of training and experience under your belt. That's why, you know, I think the audience reacts to you. When you realize that you were developing a fan base and the people not only cared, but like really liked you and were really into it and were buying t-shirts and buying merch. When you realize like there are Billie Starkz fans, was that like trippy for you?
It still is weird to me sometimes because I'm like, I'm just like another person. Like I always say like people put wrestlers on like this pedestal.
Yeah.
And I feel like we get forgotten that we're like humans sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is so weird. Why do people like me? I don't think I'm doing anything. I'm just having a good time.
Yeah, like, what's it like for you when a grown-ass person comes up to you and, like, clearly is, like, has that sort of, I'm meeting a celebrity nervousness? Because I'm sure it's happened that, like, adults have been like, I'm a big fan.
But I think it's, like, I just remember when I was younger and I would meet wrestlers, like, so I always relate it back to that.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is crazy because, like, I can always see it in their shoes now versus, and then when I was in theirs, and I was like, this is weird. Like, I never thought I would experience something like this. And then it's like, why do people like me? I'm not really doing anything. And then to them, I'm like the world and I'm doing this crazy, like, thing on the weekends. And then I'm also, like, doing this while still being in high school and, like, living a life.
Yeah. Do you ever, like, okay, like, do you, after a weekend, right, of, like, really great shows, you're driving home, are you ever like, oh, I have a test on Monday?
Like
I have to
literally
study.
this weekend.
Oh.
Like I have so many projects and stuff due. I had to write a topical essay on this Russian short story book, and I was dreading it. I was like, here, I'll knock it out before this weekend. And then my theater teacher was like, hey, we're going to do a theaterist freaking project. And I was like, what is this? More?
Yeah.
And I missed school this Friday because I'm wrestling, of course. And I, like, told my physics teacher, I was like, can I just knock out the test now? Can I? I don't want to do it when I come back. Please just let me go.
Did they let you knock it out early?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm
And
very lucky
do you study, like, a lot? Like, do you don't have to, or?
I'm very lucky that school comes easy to me. Like,
Whew.
I am in IB and AP classes, and I, like,
Oh.
am, like, oh, it's fine. Like, most of the time, I am very honest with my teachers. Like, I'm not home at all this weekend. Can I get, like, a day or two extension on this? Because I'm not, like, going to be able to do this with the time that you've given me.
Yeah.
Like, if you assign something on a Friday, I'm gone all weekend, and you want it that Monday, I'm like, okay, can you give me at least that Monday while I'm home to actually have time and, like, sit down and do this?
Yeah.
And I've been very lucky that most of my teachers are very like, yeah, you're having a conversation with me. You obviously want to get this work done, and you're talking about your schedule. You're going and doing things. And most of them understand where I'm coming from, and I'm very like, here, let me put on professional face and look nice.
Well, I think, too, like, I think most of your teachers probably wanted to do something. Some of them probably wanted to teach, but they probably, I would hope that most of them see you and go like, this person has figured it out. They're doing what they want to do already. I can't slow that down by being like, no, my class is more important. Because it's not. You know what I mean? Like, your one individual assignment, like, yeah, it's important, but it's not more important. Like, it's not important enough for you to slow down, like, doing this thing that is what you actually want to do with your life.
Yeah. And I think they're so supportive just because they see that I have this work ethic.
Yeah.
But I'm also doing stuff outside of school that truly brings me happiness. And they're like, I shouldn't, like, take away this kid being happy. Like,
and you're doing it at a high level. Like, that matters.
Yeah.
Like, you're not just messing around.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, you're really doing it.
Yes.
You're not just, like, playing wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
You're wrestling.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, like, I've shown, like, what I'm doing on the weekends to these teachers, and they're like, this is, like, insane. You're a little superstar just running around. And, like, we joke, they're like, oh, yeah, when you make it famous one day, can I get a ticket or something?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, maybe. Just give me an A for this assignment that I didn't do.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. So who's in the big Starkz brand right now? I know that the roster feels
huge.
big. Yeah.
Yes, very huge. We were talking about, like, how we have almost, like, a person in, like, every side of the United States now. And we're like, oh, we have Ace Perry, we have Cole Radrick, we have Dante and Darius Martin, and then we have Calvin Tankman, we have Sonico, we have Nick Wade, myself, of course, and Alex Kane. List goes on and on and on. And of course, JJ. I like JJ. His mean headlocks.
Well, look, I don't want to put any undue pressure on you or put you in an awkward situation. But when Nick Gage was here, he did induct me into the Murder, Death, Kill gang. So I'm saying, like, you know, if there was a broadcaster to be in the Big Starkz brand, I feel like at some point, you know, an invitation wouldn't be undeserved.
So welcome to the family, but I have to get it approved by Mouse yet.
Yes.
So Mouse has to approve it. I am the face of the company. I'm not the corporate.
That's right. You're the mellow. I forgot. Well, look, I'm thrilled for your success. I think it's really cool to watch. I loved it. I feel like we get to be kind of on this journey with you to watch this thing happen. Like, there's just so much potential to just keep, like, you're already here now. So, like, who knows? Like, I like you said, I think the whole wrestling industry is just in this amazing sort of place of flux where it's changing and, like, being redefined, and the things we're taking for granted are not necessarily true anymore, and just everything's different. And I mean, like, you know, I was talking about it, you know, with Effie when he was here, and, like, going to these GCW shows, when you look at that audience and the way that the audience, like, not only accepts things, but it's not about it's about being a fan of things, right?
Yes.
Like, Effie is, like, one of the biggest heroes in that company. Like, you show up in that company, like, there was a time when somebody like you would show up in a company like that and they get booed.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's too, you know, it's too nice, whatever. Like, they get, and, like, the fact that you come in and you're good in the ring, so you get cheered.
Accepted,
like,
yeah.
people are like, "Yay, this is gonna be great." I just think it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So congratulations on everything. Is there, for people that didn't know you before this, is there a match or a segment or something that you would direct people to be like, well, now that I've heard this interview, I want to know more about this person, or see her do her thing?
Like, there's the JCW matches up on YouTube, and when I made, like, this whole transition, like, I used to be all blue hair, and I had different style gear, and I think, like, the match to define me now would definitely be, like, me versus Matt Makowski. I always say his name wrong. I wanna make him Mazowski because of Monster Inc. But I feel like that's one of, like, my really, really standout matches, and it's up on YouTube, so it's available to anybody.
That's perfect. And where can people follow you? Where can people find out where you're gonna be? Where can people get that sweet, sweet mama merch?
All of my social media is at Billie Starkz, Billie, because I'm special. And then Starkz ends with a Z.
Because you're special.
Yes, because I'm special. And if you want to check out any of, like, the merchandise I sell, it's all at bigstarkzbrand.com. It's linked in my Twitter bio, so hopefully that's easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, like, pretty much the stuff.
That's fantastic. Thank you for making the time. I appreciate it. And yeah, best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much. I had fun. This was really fun.
Awesome.